started. Divya ma'am, please go ahead.
Good evening to one and all present here. Before we start the session, I would express my hearty thanks to all of the participants for taking out time and attending this webinar. I would also humbly request all the participants to mute themselves and refrain from writing on screen during the session. Though you can post your questions and suggestions in the chat window. Thank you. I, Korapati Divya, Faculty of Electronics and Communication Engineering Department, would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you for this webinar on deep learning and convolutional neural networks. I would welcome Honorable Secretary Ma'am, Ms. Rajeshri, Principal Sir, Dr. Venkat Seshaya Naidu, Vice Principal, Corporate Relation and Training Placement, Mrs. Lakshmi Kalam, Head of the Department, Sri Malla Jagan Mohan Rao, our esteemed speaker, Dr. Ratnakar Das, Assistant Professor CSC, NIT Roorkela, and all participants of the webinar. As a member of Rishi family, I would like to tell you about Rishi Institution that is located in the heart of the city near JNTH Metro Station, Hyderabad. Rishi MS Institute of Engineering and Technology for Women was established in 2009 in the memory of Bharat Ratna Mrs. MS Subbalakshmi Garu. It is ISO 9001 2015 certified and ISO 14001 2015 certified. The Rishi Institution is functioning under the able stewardship and guidance of founder chairman late Sri P. Vaman Rao Garu, former director, Information of Public Relations, Films and Tourism, Joint Secretary, Andhra Pradesh Government, who formerly served as a chief executive at Birla Group of Industries and also was chairman in many audit committee and a member of various committees on the board of HIL. The management of Rishi aims to contribute to society in pursuit of creating a professional management education center as the best place to enhance the abilities of learning skills in students at a high level of excellence. I can proudly say that during the past 31 years, Rishi educational institutions have literally turned into a rising sun of knowledge and success and most sought after institution among the women students. All this would be incomplete without the introduction of the pillar of Rishi Group of Institution, none other than our Secretary Ma'am, Ms. Rajeshri Garu. She is one of the founder member of Rishi UBR Educational Institutions. Also is a member of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan School Committee. She is one of the panel member of STS NET to produce film on education, art and culture for Mana TV. She is an achiever of Vikas Ratna Gold Medal Award from International Integration Society, New Delhi. Along with list of achievement, she is a socialist who promotes women empowerment and is supporting many organizations in Hyderabad. I would also take the opportunity through some light on achievements of Rishi institutions. We have CII membership for industry collaboration. There are ongoing IIIT Hyderabad research project on IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning within our Rishi premises. Rishi has MSME incubation cell under supervision of which this year, out of 78 innovative ideas, 20 ideas are submitted to MSME funds. We are also in the final round of Smart India Hackathon for delivering an artificial intelligence based hardware. 21 of our Rishi students are building prototype in IoT and AI in ISB program. Rishi also adds to the list AICT Intenshala South Zone 2019 award. We at Rishi also welcome ideas from outside to provide 100% guidance to take your ideas to next level by giving right industry and advisory. Rishi in collaboration with IIITH have submitted research project for development in AI, IoT, machine learning in Women Scientist scheme. Recently, we have conducted series of successful webinars on advanced robotics, Python, artificial intelligence, and blockchain, Oracle, PL, SQL, etc. Today's webinars on deep learning and convolutional neural networks. So what is deep learning? Deep learning is an artificial intelligence function that imitates the working of human brain in processing the data and creating patterns from use in decision making. Deep learning is primarily about neural networks, where a network is an interconnected web of nodes and edges. It is a branch of study that tries to mimic human brain. The main concept in deep learning algorithms is automating the extraction of representations from the data. Deep learning algorithms uses a huge amount of unsupervised data to automatically extract from complex representation. So what is CNN? CNNs are deep nets that are used for image, object, and even speech recognition. Deep supervised neural networks are generally too difficult to train. Neural nets were designed to perform complex tasks such as the task placing objects into categories based on a few attributes. Neural nets are highly structured networks and have three kinds of layers: an input, an output, and so-called hidden layers, which refer to any layers between the input and the output layers. Each node in the hidden and output layers has a classifier. Coming to overview of convolutional neural networks. A CNN is a special case of the artificial neural network. A CNN consists of one or more convolution layers, often with a subsampling layer, which are filtered by one or more fully connected layers in a standard neural network. Convolution layers play the role of future extractor. Convolution networks are simply neural networks that uses convolution in place of general matrix multiplication in at least one of their layers. Convolution is a mathematical operating have a linear form. Coming to applications of convolutional neural networks: image retrieval, detection, self-driving cars, schematic segmentation, face recognition, pose estimation, detect diseases, speech recognition, text processing, analysis satellite data. So today to speak on this topic, we have with us a very esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Ratnakar Das. Dr. Ratnakar Das is working as an assistant professor, grade 1, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Rourkela. He has completed his PhD degree from NIT Rourkela during the year 2012. He has more than 12 years of teaching and research experience. He has been awarded as co-supervisor and principal supervisors for PhD scholars. His research interests includes a biomedical signal processing and control, image processing, extreme learning for automated detection, neurocomputing, computational vision and robotics, etc. He has published more than 50 research in various research in journals and international conference proceedings such as IEEE, IIT, elsewhere, SPICE, and Springs, etc. He has also reviewed various research journal conference papers of IEEE, IIT, elsewhere, Springs, etc. Sir, we are very privileged that we have got this great opportunity to listen to you today. Over to you, sir.
Okay. So, thank you, Rishi Engineering College and the management team, principal sir and the coordinators and head of the department, EC of Rishi Engineering College for inviting me as a speaker to this webinar on deep learning and CNN. Okay, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
I also thank all the participants who are in this webinar to listen my speech on this topic, which is now a buzzword. Okay, so now let me share my screen. I will go in a simpler way, starting from the neural network. So let me share the screen. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So artificial intelligence, as I was telling, it is the broader concept of machine to carry out tasks in a smarter way, that we provide intelligence to the machine so that it can carry out the tasks in a smarter way that like human brain can do itself. Similarly, machine learning is the subset of AI. So where we give the machine to access to the data and let the machine learn itself to carry out a task in the smarter way. So the difference between AI and machine learning would be, I can say that machine learning is a subset where we give the machine to experience with the data and use this experience to carry out the task. So if you go by Tom Mitchell's definition, it is like machine learning is said to learn from experience E with respect to some class of task T and a performance measure P if the learner's performance at task T in the class as measured by P improves with experience. It says that, like, let us suppose we are doing a task of character recognition or handwritten character recognition. So the task T is recognition of characters, and performance measure P would be the recognition accuracy, and the experience is the data that we have collected of from different persons' handwriting, uh, which is already in a supervised way to recognize. So if we are able to write a machine learning program where the machine can learn from the data and improves the recognition accuracy, that is P, with the experience E. So it is the definition given by Tom Mitchell. And we say why we require learning. So learning is used when human expertise doesn't exist, and always humans are not able to explain their expertise, and the solutions changes in time, and solution needs to be adapted to particular cases. So in machine learning, what we do, we take some data and create a model by training on the data and use the trained model to make prediction on new data. So this machine learning is completely governed by the human brain structure, where we have a cerebral cortex and have multiple layers of abstraction, and which are combined to create a higher level of abstraction. It is from the, you can see it from the this human brain structure. So there are different levels of abstraction, V1, V2, V3, and V4, which are combined together to create a high level of abstraction. So in that, we try to simulate a human brain to create a machine learning model. So this machine learning model, I'm talking about the deep learning. So deep learning, there is special about deep learning nowadays because as I told, there are many applications which are governed by the deep learning models. Now you might be heard of the AlphaGo, which is a computer program developed by the DeepMind of Google, which has owned the highest perform of the highest human performer, and now it has been a history to be the most topmost learner or topmost player of the DeepMind. Now similarly, we can have applications like Facebook, which uses the photos to identify a human face, and it uses millions of images of the human face to build such a model. Uh, Again, Google also have developed its deep learning model to use in its energy saving data center. It has, by using so this, it has tried to reduce the 40% of the energy. Now you can see that there are a lot of applications where deep learning can be useful. So now we can ask why the deep learning is so popular nowadays, because the deep learning is very easy to work, and because of the uh, development of the powerful computational machines and the softwares, open source software, it is driven to develop more number of applications like DeepMind. And if you go by definition, it's a subfield of machine learning, which are mainly concerned or inspired by the artificial neural network, which is nothing but a function of the human brain. In which there are multiple levels of feature, and these features are automatically discovered and they are composed together to various levels to produce the output. Now you can see this is a picture of a simple neural network, and we'll have a multi-view add multiple layers of abstraction into the network, where it contains number of hidden layers, and each hidden layer contains certain number of nodes which are depend on the particular application and particular program which are trying to solve. So by using these multiple layers of abstraction, we can create a higher level of abstraction and higher level of set of features which can be used for to further classify the images and videos. So mostly deep learning concept has been developed initially to recognize images, videos, and text. But nowadays it has also been used to predict so many things and used in many of the business applications, which can take signals other than images and videos. Now coming to the difference between machine learning and deep learning. As I told, deep learning is the subset of machine learning, where we take the data, a big data which is of higher volume, in order to extract features. So now if you see from this picture, you can see that though machine learning is always popular for the structured data like images and videos, used for prediction applications, it requires a human expertise in order to extract feature from the data, that is handcrafted feature, which is fed to a classifier in order to produce the output. Like for this example, input, there is a picture of a car, and there is a human being or human domain expert knowledge used to extract the meaningful features from the object and fed to a classifier in order to distinguish whether it is a car or not a car. However, though machine learning models are always popular, but it requires human expertise or domain knowledge expertise, which can extract the meaningful feature which can be used for classification. So in case of deep learning, this human level expertise, because this success of the machine learning models mostly depend on the this domain expert, because the feature extracted are not of relevant with respect to the object to be identified. So it cannot give you the performance, better performance. So it can, instead of telling it's a car, it may give a wrong result. So always machine learning models heavily depends on the domain knowledge expert in order to extract the meaningful feature from the object to be recognized. In case of deep learning, this human level expertise is not required, where we feed the raw data to the created deep learning model, and the deep learning model tries to learn the feature or the relevant information from the raw data itself and try to recognize the object uh, automatically without creating the feature level abstraction from the human expertise. It does this job automatically. As I told, applications are many more, Google DeepMind applications and Facebook applications. So if you see why we study deep learning and why this deep learning networks gives a better performance than the machine learning for a big data, that shows that if it is the intuition has been taken from a circuit theory analysis, which says that performance of algorithms, deep learning algorithm, has been shown to be much higher when the amount of data is higher. So it says that expressibility of any logic network exponentially increases with layers, because if you add more and more layers in a network, it extracts more meaningful feature, more meaningful abstractions. So it combines those abstractions to create a more meaningful data, which can be subsequently utilized for classification. So it can this relationship can be shown here, that amount of data older algorithms refers to the machine learning algorithms which has been developed much older, or many years older. So this can perform, the performance doesn't improve after a certain threshold. However, the performance of the deep learning models increases with the exponentially increases with the data. So this example, if you can see in a face recognition system, first layer might extract the edges and corners, second layer combine them to get features like ear, nose, etc. And final layer combines all of the general features to create an overall face. So this is the main intuition behind DL. Why DL is popular? Because deep learning is creating a multiple layers of abstraction to give a successful or better performance than the conventional machine learning models, where this accuracy of performance of the machine learning models heavily depends on the handcrafted features. Now, let us see a brief timeline of deep learning development. So it's basically a development of the whole machine learning setup. It is started from 1940. Now we are in 2020, where there are so many things have been developed, starting from perceptron, self-organizing map, whole field network, multi-layer perceptron, RNN, Boltzmann machine. So the backpropagation, LSTM. LSTM, you see, LSTM, and this conventional unit has been developed in 1919. Though it has been developed in many years older, uh, but the successful of these deep learning algorithms is came to existence in 2012 after the powerful GPU-based implementation DL model came into existence. So this performance of the DL algorithm has been developed and come into existence after the GPU-based implementation. One of them was AlexNet model, which won the ImageNet competition in that year. Now, coming to the deep learning, as I told you, deep learning has the basic part of our basic structure of the deep learning model is the neural network, and the neural network, the basic element is your perceptron. So this is the diagram of a perceptron, and it's a fundamental building block where it shows a single neuron in a neural network. We have the inputs x1 to xm, and a bias which has a input 1. They are applied to a node. It's also called a neuron. It has two parts. One is the summation part, one is the activation part. So, and one is y is the output. This neuron is the mathematical representation of a biological neuron that is in a human brain. Though because the deep learning is heavily is the primarily concerned with the neural network. So this perceptron model, if you add more number of perceptron connected back to back, it creates a multiple layer perceptron, and it is used for the creating the deep model. So to see how it works, let us see a single perceptron model, then we will see the structures of the deep learning model. So here this y output is expressed in the mathematical equation as g, which is a nonlinear activation function, bias b, uh, and the weighted sum of input and the weights connected to the neuron. So b is the bias. So x1 w1, x2 w2, xm wn. So y equal to the activation function applied on the linear combination of the input. So examples of common activation functions. Here we take a nonlinear activation function because this nonlinear activation function has a power to approximate the many more complex functions. So we add, this is the most primary function of the neural network, which has given us the power to approximate or solve complex tasks. So the nonlinearity function is added. It's also known as activation function. So these are the common activation functions. So it's a sigmoid functions. It is 1 by 1 plus e to the minus z, hyperbolic tangent, rectified linear unit. So as we come discuss later, this ReLU has been the main activation function widely used in CNNs. So these are different examples of activation functions. Why we required activation function? Because we need to limit the feature values, and it requires differentiable feature space, okay, which can be learned by the inputs. Now, how we do the training? So in any machine learning model, as we know, as I told it, we give the machine access to the data. From the data, it tries to learn the set of features, and using those features, you try to recognize the object or do a specific task. So in while creating a machine learning model, what we do, we feed the machine a lot of data. So the data is passed through the network, and the network is trained, and after training it it creates an optimized set of weights. These optimized set of weights are later on used to recognize or classify or predict the new data. So how this training is done? So it is a phase, it is nothing more than the phase during which we estimate the weights. As I told, these weights are also called the hyperparameters of the model. So initially we feed the data with a random set of weights and compute the output using a forward propagation. Then in the supervised model, because this all of whatever we are discussing now is a supervised model where we know the output data in the training data, output parameter in the training data. So using those output, we can compute the error, and this error or loss function is back propagated in order to we try to use a loss function. So what is a loss function? Loss function is nothing but it can be considered as a error or what we try to minimize. So weight, because we are trying to optimize the weights in the network, which are initially random in nature. So if we pass our input through the random weights, it creates an output. The output is compared with the actual output, and if we try to compute the loss function from the actual output and the predicted output, the predicted output is a function of the input and the weight. So the loss, what kind of loss function I use depends on the application and type of network I use. So we'll talk about that, what kind of loss function we should go for. Like if you want to have a prediction based analysis or a prediction model, create a prediction model. So the output is compared with the actual output is compared with the predicted output, and compute the mean square error between the predicted output and the actual output, and try to use this mean square error in order to minimize the loss to create an optimized set of weights. So in case of classification, we can use a entropy based loss function to in order to uh, optimize our weights. So as I told, this loss function is a function of network weights. Our task is to find the set of weight that achieves the lowest cost. So here, what is the objective function? The objective function is JW, is a function of loss. So if in the network we have only two set of weights, like here, I've shown m number of weights. So if we have two set of weights, because um, it is easier for us to visualize in a two dimension. So here I've shown you the plot of objective function with respect to two set of weights. So this is the surface plot of the objective function for different values of W0 and W1. So is our target or objective is to minimize the objective or J So if you, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, it is audible.
Okay. If you start from for a particular location W0 and W1 let us suppose from this point. So we this is the random point of W0 and W1. So we move on towards the negative gradient direction in order to reach at the minimum. And sometimes it may so happen that the error or objective function has multiple number of minimums, so we may be trapped in the local minimum. So it is our lookout to how to get to the global optimum point, which is shown here from. So in some of the deep learning cases or some of the machine learning algorithms, it may so happen that we may be trapped in the local minimum. So there are uh, different procedures in order to avoid local minima and try to reach the optimum or the global minimum in order to optimize our weight. So to minimize as I told, to minimize the loss function, we can apply the gradient descent algorithm. What we do, the steps are, first of all, we randomly pick an initial vector of weights W. Okay. Then we compute the gradient of the loss function. The loss function, as I told, is dependent on the application or prediction, what we are considering, like prediction, application, or classification algorithm. So depending on the loss function, we compute the gradient of W vector. The gradient direction indicates the direction to take in order to optimize the loss function. So what we do initially, we will not jump to the directly to the minimum. We'll take a smaller step by step. So the length amount of coverage here from this point to this point is known as the step we are taking to move in the particular direction. So here you can see that this particular step, initial step, is higher than this step. So while moving from this to this, we may take if we make a fixed step size, or we can have a variable step size in order to reach to the minimum point. So we take a small step in the opposite direction of gradient. That's why it is known as negative gradient. And we update because we are considering a minimum problem here. So we must the problem converges if we try to move in the negative direction. So while moving in the step, we try to update our weights according to the update rule. So new updated value will be W minus eta into differentiation of JW with respect to W. So J is our objective function, which is nothing but function of loss. So we move continuously. Please mute others. So we move continuously until convergence to reach the lowest point of this landscape. So it may be, as I told, we may trap in a local minimum. So we can be sure that whether it is, you should be sure that whether it is a local minimum or global minimum. So depending on that, we may have to change our algorithm, or we may have to change the procedure of this updation rule. So there are so many things or so many rules behind this in order to find a global minimum out of so many local minimums. Now, this was a very brief introduction to the deep learning network, why deep learning are used, and the basic building blocks is perceptron. Now, if we connect several number of perceptrons connected back to back and create a several layer of abstraction, which can be combined to create a high level of abstraction, and which is nothing but a deep learning. So one of the important deep learning network, which has been very popular for image recognition or video recognition, is the convolutional neural network. So the basic building blocks are perceptrons only. However, the operation, as the name says, the operations involved are convolution. And after the convolution operation, we have several other operations. We'll go in the discussion how convolutional neural network works. So now before that, we must discuss who has developed this. So Jan LeCun, like a professor of computer science, he has developed along with his friend Bengio in 1995. So he has tried to produce an internal representation of the visual world to detect and classify objects into different categories. So this classification objects into different category poses many challenges, like pose variation, scale variation, illumination, conformation, occlusion, and clutter. So there are so many with respect to this, so many challenges. It has tried to support the recognition with a good internal representation, and it has been observed that CNN has been successfully used in classifying the object into multiple categories, multiple category objects, mm, by with mitigating these challenges. So previously, as I told in computer vision and machine learning problems, we are using a handcrafted feature extractor where a human expertise, a domain knowledge expertise was used to extract the feature which is relevant for classification, classifying and categorizing the object. Now, what we do in with respect to deep learning, the computer vision problems are to learn the suitable representation of the images by having multiple layers of abstraction. So now argument over this is biological vision is hierarchically organized. Similarly, computer vision also we are trying to organize it hierarchically. Now this is the basic structure of a CNN, where the input is a vehicle which is to be recognized out of several vehicles. So we can have several vehicles like car, truck, van, and bicycle. This CNN can be used to recognize whether it is a car or a truck or a van or a bicycle. So as I know that the basic heart of these particular networks are neurons, which are neurobiologically motivated by the findings of locally sensitive and oriented nerve cells in the visual cortex. As I told that this basic building block is the perceptron or neuron. So these perceptrons are connected back to create a deep layer. So this particular CNN consists of many operations like convolution operation, pooling operation, uh, pull and flatten, fully connected and soft operation. We will go one by one. So each layer, how it works and how this each of these functions are actually required, and without this each of these functions, what will be the effect. So now, like as I told, it is the function of this particular network or the optimization of this particular network are similar to the optimization of normal neural networks, which uses the back propagation algorithm. Now, basic layers of CNN are your convolution layer. There is a ReLU layer, pooling layer, fully connected layer, and softmax layer. So you see, this particular picture shows there is a this convolution layer actually extracts the feature from the object or the raw data using a convolution function. Okay, this convolution operation is made in each layer, okay, to extract the multiple levels of feature. Finally, these multiple levels of feature are combined to create a final level of abstraction. So you see these blocks are different feature maps, okay, and this convolution layer extracts the feature also known as feature extraction layer, and we shift and subsample, okay, subsample the layers. Then we use shift and distortion invariance. It's also known as subsampling is also known as shift and distortion. I'll tell you how it is. Then we connect to a final layer, which is not a fully connected layer. So let us go one by one. So in case of the convolution layer, what we do, we use a filter, okay, of specified width in order to filter the raw data to create a set of features, relevant features. So now coming to a example, let us suppose we have in the input data a set of applied to a set of neurons. Okay, so suppose the input image is of size 28 cross 28, so which are connected to the input neurons. So this 28 square of neurons, this 28 square of neurons corresponds to 28 into 28 pixel intensity of the image. Okay, so the input image of size 28 cross 28 is connected to the set of neurons of size 28 cross 28. Okay, then it is connected to another set of neurons in the hidden layer. As I told that initially we have a input set of neurons which are connected to a next set of neurons in the hidden layer, which are again connected to another set of neurons in the hidden layer, and finally they are connected to the output layer. So in case of traditional neural network, what we do, we connect all input neurons to the all the connection to from input neurons to the hidden layers are full connection. Like each input neuron is connected to the all the neurons of the hidden layer. So now if you see each here is set of 28 cross 28 neuron. If you connect each input neuron to every other neurons of the fast hidden layers, the complexity of the network will be too high. So but in case of convolutional neural network, we won't connect every input pixel to every hidden neuron. Instead, we have a sparse connection from input to the input layer to the hidden layer. So each neuron in the fast hidden layer will be connected to a small region in the input layer. Like we select a patch of the input neuron and try to connect it to the fast hidden layer. Like then this patch is moved to the next set of neurons and connected to the next. Like if these set of neurons are not connected to the every other neuron, so we have a sparse connection. So this reduces the complexity of the network. So this is called the local receptive field. So it has the capability of extracting the feature of this local region. So while connecting from this region to a particular neuron, we try to extract the feature of the particular region by using a convolution operation. So the region in the input image is called the local receptive field for the hidden neuron. So it is a little window in the input pixel. Now you see, so this particular neuron, for this particular region, this is the local receptive field. So there is a weight attached from this. So here, how many neurons are connected? 5 into 5, 25 neurons are connected to one hidden neuron. So there are 25 set of weights and one bias. So these 25 set of weights are kept constant and made throughout the connection. So for the fast hidden layer, this neuron has a local receptive field which accepts the information from this region. So each connection learns a weight, and the hidden neuron learns the overall bias. So when we then slide the local receptive field across the entire input image, for each local receptive field there is a different hidden neuron in the first layer. Like you can see that. So for each receptive field, we have now this receptive field is moved to the next set of neurons and connected to the next hidden layer. Okay, so in this way we slide the local receptive field across the entire input image, and will create a different same set of feature for each hidden neuron at the different locations on the input image. So like if we have if you consider about the dimension, if it is 28 cross 28 the input image and the local receptive field is 5 cross 5, then there will be 24 into 24 neurons in the hidden layer, because this convolution operation requires from the formula of the, we'll show you the formula. So we require a 24 into 24 neurons if the local receptive field is 5 cross 5. So this we can consider the size of the filter also. If our size of the filter is 3 cross 3, so the convolution operation is performed on the filter of size 3 cross 3, and the local receptive field so there will be 24 and 24 neurons in the hidden layer. This is because we can only move the local receptive field 23 neurons across and 23 neurons down before colliding the right hand side of the input image. Now you can see the same thing. See, suppose if I take one position to the right and one position to the bottom, so in that way I can, because there are 28 cross 28, we can at max go up to this position. So we will have final output new size would be 24 cross 24. Okay, because we can move only 23 position before colliding the right. So in this case, the local receptive field moved by 1 pixel at a time. So that 1 pixel movement is also known as stride. There is a parameter called stride. So if you move 1 pixel, we say that stride is having length 1 pixel. So this is called the stride length. So the relation of the local receptive field can be defined by convolution operation. So as we know, this is the equation for convolution operation. We'll have a suppose 5 cross 5 input image with a filter or the local receptive field of size of 2 cross 2. So we can generate a 4 minus 2 plus 1 with a 3 cross 3 output feature map. Now you can see from the 20, from this example, 28 cross 28 image with a 5 cross 5 filter size generates the 24 cross 24 out feature map from the each of the local receptive field. So you can see that this operation with numbers, so we can pick up one box at a time of 2 cross 2. So which 1 into 1 plus 1 into 0 plus 1 into 1, which generates 2. Similarly, this block is shifted by 1 pixel length uh, with the same filter or same local receptive field. So it generates a value 1. Similarly, we go on sliding this window from top corner to right bottom in order to generate the different set of feature parameter feature maps using the local receptive field of 2 cross 2. In the example, this was 28 cross 28, this was 5 cross 5. So the output feature map was having size of 20 cross 24 cross 24. Here also 4 cross 4, 2 cross 2, we generate the 3 cross 3. Now same thing is shown for the for a handwritten digit. Okay, if we have an image like this for so we can use a convolution mask or receptive field of 1010101001. So in order to generate the edges in different directions. Okay, so this is a mask for to or design or filter to design to create the edges or generate the edges from the image. So you see that different feature maps have been generated by moving this filter window from input to top right to uh, top left to right bottom. So initially it is placed here and generated the feature map. It is shifted and go on shifting. By doing this multiple times, we have reached the bottom and generated the feature map. Now talking about size, if you have a n number of filters, okay, so HF and WF denotes the filter height and width. Input size is HI and WI. C is the channel number of channels, okay, because in case of video and the other domain in images, we have multiple channels like hyperspectral image and video has 3 dimensions. So in order to deal with those number of channels, we have kept a parameter C. So this also plays an important role. So if we have a filter size of HF and WF into C and input size of HI into WI into C with a padding size of padding means we insert zeros or create different size of the image which is known as the padding size P. And here in this problem we have kept the padding as 0. So we can generate the output feature map of size H0 and W0 governed by these two equations. So if we consider the stride length is a stride length indicates the movement of the pixel by 1 length, 2 length, or 3 length. So in the previous example, we have kept the stride length as 1. So by doing so, what we do, we detect the same feature at different positions in the input image. You can see that by convoluting a filter, convolution operation of the filter with respect to the input image, we create the same feature map uh, at the different locations of the input image. It check the edges at the different positions. So we try to keep the filter same while moving the filter on the image at a particular layer. Now coming to shade, weights and bias, this is very, very important. Like as I told, we have a filter map 5 cross 5 or HF cross WF connected to its local receptive field. So the same weights and bias are used for each hidden neuron. If we will not use same weights and bias for say each of these hidden neurons, so weights and it will not extract the same value of feature from different location of the input image. So remember, in a particular hidden layer, we have n number of neurons. So for each neuron and for each receptive local, for its local receptive field, we keep the weights and biases same in order to extract the same feature from the different locations in the input image. Now, for any hidden layer, the output is governed by this equation. This is the activation bias plus weights into input. Okay, all the neurons in the hidden layer detect exactly the same features I've shown. For a particular layer, all the hidden neurons detect exactly the same feature because of this same weights and biases. So if suppose weights and biases are such that hidden neurons can pick out a vertical edge in a particular local receptive field. So likely it is useful at other places in the image. So we try to keep the same weights and biases, um, weights and biases same for all neurons. And it is also helpful by keeping the same weights and biases. Uh, it decreases the complexity as well as the memory requirement also reduces, because if you keep a different set of weights and biases for all the neurons, so we need to keep track of all the weights and biases, and the number of parameters will increase exponentially. So the shared weights and biases helps us to reduce the complexity as well as helps us to extract the same feature at the different locations of the input image or input object. So this mapping from input layer to the hidden layer is known as feature map, and the weights uh, defining the feature map are called the share weights, and we call the bias defining the feature map the shared bias. So why it is known as shared? Because we use the same weights and biases for a particular hidden layer. As I told, big advantage is that it greatly reduces the number of parameters. Okay, here in the particular example, we have a 5 cross 5 local receptive field. So we require 25 shared weights and process shared bias. So it requires 26 parameters. If we have 20 feature maps, so it gives us a 20 into 26 equal to 520 parameters. So if you use a fully connected network, it requires at least 40 times as many parameters as the convolution layer. So it is uh, well understood, and it is desired that we always you should use a shared weight on same weights and biases for a particular layer in a hidden layer of any deep learning model. This also enables us for faster learning or faster training of the convolutional model. Now coming about the ReLU layer or activation function. So the neurons in the feature map of convolution layer will pass through a nonlinear activation function. As I told, the nonlinear activation functions are helpful in order to approximate a complex task. So there are so many nonlinear activation functions exist, like sigmoid, 10 hyperbolic, 10 hyperbolic, as I've shown in the previous slide. However, ReLU has been one of the important activation function, which is very simple to obtain, and has been quite popular in deep learning models. So this is a rectified linear layer other than the sigmoid function. So why this is preferred over sigmoid function, let me tell you. Because the sigmoid function, as I know, if you go to the sigmoid equation, the sigmoid equation is 1 by 1 plus e to the power minus x. So it has a exponential operation. And if you see the ReLU, it's only a very simple linear operation. It's just it looks like a linear operation. However, that if you combine this gx function, it's a nonlinear. It's actually a nonlinear function. It's not a linear function. However, it is very simple to obtain and track. So if you use a, for example, 1 minus 4, 3 minus 2, and apply a rectified linear operation on it, it generates the output like this. So because you see g of x equal to x if x is greater than 0, and it is 0 for all non-negative values, negative values. So it gives only a same value at the positive values, and it gives 0 for other values. So the another advantage of using a ReLU activation function in deep learning models is that it makes the training faster than the sigmoid function. And the disadvantage of sigmoid function is that the gradient vanishes. The gradient which is required during backpropagation vanishes if you have a multiple layers of learning. Now you see in the image formats, if you take a input feature map, there is a rectified linear feature map, and y ReLU, you see that ReLU number of, you see training is faster. The number of, with a certain number of epochs, if you use a 10s function, the convergence rate of ReLU is much faster than the 10s function. Similar, if you also compare with sigmoid function, it will come around in the middle way of 10h and ReLU. So ReLU gives a better performance with respect to the training time, and also the simplicity and the complexity of the problem. Now coming to the next set of layers, the pooling layers. So before discussing the pooling layers, let me tell you why this particular pooling operation is required in CNN. So the biggest problem in the feature map, they are very sensitive uh, to the locations of the input image, locations of the feature in the input map or input image. So the feature value changes if you change the locations in the input image. So in order to, so this is called sensitivity of the feature map with respect to the location. So this sensitivity can be reduced by using an operation called downsampling, because if you apply downsampling operation, it has been observed that downsampling operations are more robust to the locations of the input feature map. Right? And this particular set of pooling operations are helpful in providing the location invariance, which is very robust and very simple operation, and downsamples the input feature map and summarizes them and to create a different feature map. So these pooling layers are used immediately after the convolution layer. The pooling layers simplify the, as I told, it simplify the information in the output from the convolution layer, and each feature map is summarized, and it prepares a condensed feature map. So there are different types of pooling operation, like we can summarize a region of 2x2 in the previous layer. So there are different pooling procedures. One, we can have max pooling, mean pooling, stochastic pooling. So here you see this 2x2 feature map, output from the feature map has been reduced to a single unit. So this 2x2 feature map is summarized by a single unit feature. So this single unit feature is obtained by pooling operations. So we can obtain different pooling operations such as max pooling, mean pooling, stochastic pooling. So you can see this operation. I think it's a max pool operation with 2x filter with a stride 2. So you see a particular set of feature is summarized into a new feature map. So 1156. So max pooling, we capture the maximum value of this feature matrix, which is described by 6 in this example. Similarly, we can obtain 8, 3, and 4 from the other feature maps. So this is the operation known as max pooling operation. And another operation we can have average pooling. Average pooling, what we do, we create the average of this block, like 1 plus 1 plus 5 plus 6 divided by 4 will keep here. So this is known as average pooling. In case of stochastic pooling, another type of, so there are different types of pooling like this. In case of stochastic pooling, we create a probability map from the activation output of the activation or output of the feature map. So this is the probability values of this feature map. So how this probability is computed: 0.8, 2.3, and 0.5 divided by the whole summation of the whole will give you the probability of the feature map. And this, in order to take this or summarize this, we can select a particular value which corresponds to 0.14 here, I think. So this becomes the value. Out of this, all the values, we select the 0.5. So this is the example of stochastic pooling. So this, as I told, this pooling operation mm, helps us to summarize the feature map by downsampling, which makes it robust to the location of the feature map with respect to the different input images. So there are different advantages. It is reduces the computational burden. It helps the activation in the pool map mesh sensitive to the precise location, make the presentation invariant property the slide transfer. So this property is called a translational invariance property of the pooling operation. Layer. We use a fully connected layer. So we connect every neuron in one layer to every neuron in another layer. Unlike the previous layer, in convolution and pooling layer, we do not connect one neuron to every other neurons in the subsequent layer. However, in fully connected layer, as the name suggests, we connect every neuron in one layer to every neuron in another layer. So in principle, it is same as the traditional MLP or multi-layer perceptron with a weight matrix W and bias vector B. Next comes the softmax layer. So in case of softmax layer, basically softmax activation functions are used for classification problems. If in case of a prediction problem, we may not use the softmax layer. We may use a linear layer because we need to find out the continuous output. So in softmax layer mostly used for multi-class problems where it generates a value correspond to a particular class. So it depends on the probability. The softmax layer is governed by a probability equation. So where J represents the probability function, F is a given class, JF and JX given F represents the class prior probability and conditional probability of class F. Let us suppose we have a 10 class problem. If you consider a digit classification problem, English digit classification problem, we have 10 digits from 0 to 9. So we need to classify from a input feature map. The softmax layer is used to classify or used to generate a value for each of these class. It generates a value for 0, 1, 2, 3, and up to 9. And the highest value, the probability value highest to with respect to highest value is considered as the particular class. So this is governed by a probability equation. JF given X. So F is the corresponding class 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 9. X is the input feature map or input feature value. So this is can be written as JX given X, or conditional probability of X given F multiplied by the prior probability of JF, okay, divided by the evidence. So this is the this is a formula known as conditional probability formula. So using this equation, we can find out the probability of sample belonging to a particular class. So for a digit recognition problem, for a given input image, we find its probability corresponding to different digits, and we classify this the object depending on the highest probability. Now let us see how CNN works with an example. So which takes the advantage of special structure to classify the images. So here you see there is a there are three basic ideas as I told. One is local receptive field, weights, shared weights, and pooling. So here input digit 2 is we're trying to classify. We'll have two layers. You see, one layer is convolution, then convolution and pooling, then convolution and pooling, then fully connected, then this with dropout. I will tell you what is a dropout. So we'll final digits will classified from 0, 1 to up to 9. So here you see we have 28 into 28 input image. So we collect the local receptive field and connect to a particular neuron in the, these are hidden layer neurons. Okay. So we have 24 into 24 into N1 channel. So we have N1 set of filters. So each filter tries to, so we have from each filter, we generated 24 into 24 size of feature map. So similarly, N1 number of feature maps are generated in this particular layer. Okay, so this N1 number of feature map depends on the particular application. So what we should do, how to choose N1, N2, and so on, depends on the particular application. With experimentation, we can create a set of 20 filters, 30 filters, 5 filters, 10 filters. So this many number of filters can be used depending on the particular, how many number of features or how many number of feature maps you want to generate. Okay, so here it is N1 number of feature maps have been generated. Then using max pooling operation, this max pooling operation, as I told you, 24 into 24 is converted into 12 into 12 with the same number of channels. So with another set of, because this particular layer generates one set of feature map, this one set of feature map acts as input to the next set of channels, which will generate a feature map of N2 set. Okay, so the features generated particular filters are provided as input to the next layer. Finally, they are flattened or they are converted to a single vector, which are connected to a fully connected network with a ReLU activation function. And finally we have a fully connected layer with a softmax activation function, which generates a probability value for 0, 1, 2 up to 9. So for input image of 2, so the probability value of 2, if 2 is higher, we classify that image as 2, and whereas the probability with respect to 0, 1, and 9 would be lower. So here another concept like dropout is used. So dropout means, you see there are n3 number of units in the fully connected layer in the last but one layer. However, in the output we only select a few, because first of all we require 9 outputs here. So in between also we can drop out some of the input nodes in order to provide regularization to the model. So what is a regularization? Because in a multi-layer neural network in deep learning models, because there are many layers, number of layers exist in the deep learning model, so there is a high chance that the network suffers from overfitting. Okay, so it fails to generalize the model. So in order to avoid the overfitting and provide generalization to the model, what we do, we should have some regularization operation in order to avoid the overfitting. So this regularization is obtained by using this dropout concept. So what we do, instead of selecting all the nodes, we can select a random set of nodes in order to provide the regularization and to reduce the overfitting. So this overfitting problem is a very crucial in any neural network, because this if the model overfits, it fails to generalize and fails to detect the image and fails to give a proper desired accuracy or desired performance in the output, because the training overfitting refers to the model where this model is fit to recognize the trained objects very efficiently. However, it fails to detect the tested objects worstly. So this particular overfitting problem can be handled with simple dropout concept that refers to we select a random set of nodes out of the whole set of nodes. So this is a simple Python code to classify the MNIST. MNIST is a digit data set that is available, widely available data set in the machine learning domain. So here we have shown how a Python code can be written to classify a simple handwritten digits in the MNIST data. So here 7 cross 7 cross 8 indicates the this is the 28 cross 28 image given input to a first set of layers. So which has a filter size or local receptive size of 7 cross 7 with 8 number of filters. So see here it is shown only 3. However, it has similar 8 blocks. So after that we use a ReLU layer pooling layer. Then in the second layer, we use a 5 cross 5 filter size with 16 number of filters. Again, ReLU layer and Fully layer. After that, dense connected layer. Then final softmax layer. So you can see there is a Keras library that is available in the Python, which is a TensorFlow open part of TensorFlow package, which is very popular in Python for handling machine learning. Okay, so we can import the data sequentially. So we can import dense layer, dropout layer, flatten layer. So these are all the available functions available in the Keras library, and we can also import a convolution operation, max pooling operation, and we can keep a base size of some 128, number of classes 10, epoch suppose let us say 12. So we can have a input image rows and column size, specify the image row and column size is 28, 28. Now we load the data, and there are two options. One is your NCHW and NSCW. This is with respect to the types of TensorFlow, whether it is channel height width or width height width, which way it is specified. This is the data specification format. Okay, so we can reshape the training model depending on the type of data format, whether it is fast channel or the width of the data. Now, after loading the data, we can normalize the data to from 0 to 1, because finally we are generating the probability map that lies between 0 to 1. So we can always normalize the data, or it's also known as the pre-processing of the data before training. So in this particular, as you can see, we can convert the class vector into binary class matrices. So to categories, converting class to one category. Then similarly, this is for training data, this is for testing data. Then we first layer model, we use convolution with 8 filters of kernel size 7 cross 7. Activation function is ReLU. Input SEP is the input SEP that we have already set. Then similarly we apply after that, after convolution, we apply max pooling operation with pool size of 2 cross 2. Okay, pool size of 2 cross 2 indicates how many, what is the size of the data from the input feature map we are trying to summarize. Okay, so here if you use a pool size of 2 cross 2, it means it generates a one value from a 2 cross 2 feature map. Now you see there is a dropout layer added, so dropout of 0.5, so 25% of the nodes has been dropped in order to avoid the overfitting. So this is a experimental hyperparameter one the model designers should choose, because for this example we have simply chosen 0.25. This is not always true that we must choose a 0.25, 0.5, 0.6 like that. So we should carefully, while designing the model, we should carefully use these hyperparameters in order to optimize our model. So then we add a flattened model. Flatten means convert the last layer output to a 1D vector for fully connected layer, because fully connected layer takes the input from a 1D vector. So then it's a fully connected layer is also known as a dense layer, where we use a ReLU activation function. Then again we have used a dropout layer. Then we find in the dense layer we use a softmax activation function in order to generate the probability map. Now this is the up to this the part of the training is over. Now we need to no sorry, up to this we have created our layers. Then we compile using a loss function. As I told, we try to optimize our loss function using categorical or binary cross entropy, because cross entropy is the loss function mostly used for classification operations. So where we can use a accuracy as the measure. So these hyperparameters we can set for different set of data. Now we can, using this model summary, we can display the details of the model. So once you train the model, we now try to fit with the training data, training and X-train and Y-train with a validation of testing data, because there are in the training set, in the data set we have must have to divide the data from to three parts. One is training, validation, and testing. So this is part of the validation, where it is taking the test and Y test and X test and Y test. So X is the input data, Y is the output data. So up to this we run the training process. So when the model is fit with respect to the training data, so we can evaluate the model with a square using the test data, X test and Y test. So remember this, that the test data that is used in X test and Y test is not the same as the data which is used in the evaluation. So we can print this loss and accuracy letter. Now you can see the visual results of for a recognition of digit 0. So here you see in the first layer we generate different feature map, set of features using different filters. Now in the next layer we generate another set of features. So using this multiple layer of set of features, we finally classify them into different categories. So after discussing this set of CNNs in the convolutional neural network, there are certain limitations that we must discuss, because the CNNs always are also popular because of their performance at high data, for a high data. So if you see from a memory and capacity standpoint of view, CNN is not much bigger than a regular two-layer network. At runtime, the convolutional operations are computationally expensive, because the the training data, if the training data is used, it takes most of the time, and the complexity of the networks increases if the data set, the size of the data increases. And CNN, the performance of CNN, as I shown you in the previous slides, the performance CNN is better when you use a huge set of data. So if you use a huge set of data, the runtime increases and increases the complexity, and it is also slower than the fully connected equivalent. Size wise, if you, because though we have used a sparse connection, because in the hidden layers of the CNN, however, we are using multiple layers of CNN to make it deep, and it need to handle the more amount of data. So it is generally slower than their fully connected counterparts. So in order to avoid this limitation, as I told, ReLU is one of the important activation function used to make the thing simpler, or to make the complexity lower. So because if you use a simple hyperbolic function, then fully connected equivalent, so it is 6 times. If you use a ReLU, it is it is seen that it is 6 times faster than the hyperbolic function. And with the development of multiple GPU system, or parallel computing uh, infrastructure, we can always reduce the limitation and use the CNN for most of the applications. Another thing is using a pre-trained network. We can somewhat decrease the complexity of the solution or complexity of the training part. So what is it? Let us understand what is a pre-trained network or a transfer learning in case of CNN or in any other deep learning network. So transfer learning is a procedure which enables the designer uh, to create a model uh, in a very simpler manner than the traditional learning. So what we do in transfer learning, we store the knowledge which is obtained while solving one problem. Like I told that if a particular deep learning model is trained with a particular set of data, or like suppose we want to recognize handwritten digit written in a different language. Okay, so we can use the transfer learning procedure where this knowledge is gained by training the model with a data which is in the same domain, however in a different feature set or different input. Like suppose we are trying to recognize the handwritten digits written in Telugu or Odia or whatever. So trying to recognize Telugu or Odia language in a deep learning framework can use a transfer learning or can use the knowledge gained uh, by solving the MNIST problem. Like the deep learning model is already structures are already available with by training with the MNIST data or English language data. So those knowledge can be used to train our Odia or Telugu data, and because this is a different data, however it's related. So knowledge gained while learning to recognize cars could apply when trying to recognize stock. As I told, we can recognize our own language with the knowledge gained from the MNIST data. So this is like makes the network little bit simpler. So instead of starting from a new point from a random point, we can start from the point which has been already obtained by having some preliminary knowledge or we must know what is a neural network, what is the basic perceptron architecture, how perceptron learning is done. Now, this transfer learning is the learning of the perceptron network in order to understand the MLP. So this is called transfer learning. So instead of starting from a new point or starting from a new point, we can start with a point which is already obtained from the previous data. So the advantages are, you can see here, we can load a pre-trained network with 1 million images for 1,000 classes. So this, what we do, we use the same set of weights and simply replace the final layer, which corresponds to our data, and train the data with our training images. So this training is avoided for the first set of layers, and training is only done for the last set of layers. So fine tuning of the network with transfer learning is much faster and easier than constructing and training a new network. So as I told, we will not use the whole training of the whole set of layers. We use the first set of layers with the pre-trained data, and only use the last set of layers for the for the new data. So this fine tuning this network with transfer learning is much faster, because we require to optimize, because these first set of layers are already optimized, already having optimized weights. So because this why how it is working, because the in the deep learning models, the first set of layers generates a similar feature from the data, whether it is a uh, first set of data, second set of data, Telugu handwritten digits, Odia handwritten digits, English handwritten digits. So first set of layers generate similar kind of feature. So the main concentration lies in the last set of layers, which is motivated, which is trained to recognize the original our data. Uh, so this doesn't require any type of fine tuning to the first set of layers. Only fine tuning is required to the last set of layers, which is trained on the new data, or the your data set it is written. So we require training for the last set of layers with a pre-trained network. the advantage is that the pre-trained network is already learned a lead set of features. So this set of features, which is already been trained for a old set of data, which is already learned for, can be applied to the new set of data and for other similar tasks. So these are very popular convolutional neural networks, LeNet 8. So this bracket shows the number of layers it has. Because this Silicon, so you see the Silicon has developed this LeNet. AlexNet is developed in 2012. JeffNetO is 2013. 14 it is GoogleNet. 14 again VGGNet with 19 layers and 16 layers. GoogleNet is developed by Google, which is a very popular network. And there is a residual net which is developed in 2015, which is 152 set of layers, and number of layers also is chosen by the particular application. And coming to the number of parameters, you can see there are a huge set of parameters are required to select these 60,000 parameters are required in simply 8 layers. 60 million parameters are required in AlexNet, 4 million in GoogleNet, 138 million parameters are required in VGGNet. So we can see the amount of parameters required for different CNN architectures, which are required to be trained and which are required to be optimized. So as I say that CNN is very popular to deal with recognizing objects, video, images, text. So nowadays it also has been used to recognize other signals and to classify other signals. So this I think this is all about your convolutional networks and introduction, very brief introduction to the deep learning. So may I request the participants to have a discussion on if you have any doubt on the topic. Hello? Hello?
I request participants to post your questions in the chat box, please. Ratnakar sir,
Yes.
there is a question in a data science project.
Yes.
How much percentage of machine learning is used?
In a data science project, how much percentage of?
How much percentage of machine learning is used?
So in any data science project, we have basically two operations. One is we need to either to predict some data or have to classify the data. So that depends on whether you are going for prediction or classification. So 80% of operations are machine learning operations, like except pre-processing. So pre-processing is the domain dependent, which what kind of domain you are using. So after pre-processing, most of the operations are machine learning operations.
Okay, sir. One more question, sir. How impact bias in deepening learning?
Bias has a role in learning, because it has a input one, like we have a linear axis or the your separating boundary, that shifting of the separating boundary for fine tuning, we require the bias.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more question, sir. Is there any formula to find number of hidden formula?
Yes, there is a formula that is there in the machine learning, but this is not the there is a rule for that. We can multiply because there are in the deep learning there are so many layers. Okay, so the designer can decide by experimentally. However, there is a thumb rule. It is there in the formula.
Someone is asking LSTM advantage, sir. Advantage of LSTM.
So here, whatever I have discussed is about convolutional neural network. Similar, this convolutional neural network are basically used to recognize images and videos. So this LSTM is a version of sequential network. It is used to approximate the sequential operations in video, like video sequential operations, to map the sequential operations, long-term, short-term memory. So you see in a video there are temporal segments. Okay, like we have pixel information as well as the time information. So in order to handle the sequential information, we require LSTM.
Okay,
So
sir. What is the use of epochs?
Epochs. So while training, we go on optimizing our weights. Okay. So for a set of data, we get a weight. Then we try to see our output. Then if the output is not up to the mark or desired, not matching up to the desired output, we go on optimizing the weights again. So one optimizing weights at one instance is known as one epoch.
Actually, they're asking, will it define the count of front propagations and back propagations?
Yes, one front propagation and one back propagation means one epoch. One complete front propagation as well as back propagation is counted as one epoch. Actually, there are two things. One is your batch rule. One is your sequential rule. Okay. So in batch rule, what we do, we provide all the data at a time, all the samples at a time, train the network, back propagate the network. Okay. This is called batch training. In sequential training and sequential learning, we give one data at a time, pass through the network, see the output, whether it is matching the output or not. Then we try to modify the weights. Then again apply the next sample. This is called as sequential learning. So epoch is considered in batch training.
So someone is asking what basically channels are here?
Channels. So channels are the number of filters. Like I have shown you that. Let me show you that again. So here you see in 24 into 24 is the output feature map. So N1 represents the number of channels, means number of filters we have. Like for a particular input of 28 cross 28, we have N1 channels, means N number of filter maps. So N number of filter map, N1 number of filters generates N1 set of feature maps. Like suppose we have a filter 101, 010, 001. So this is a filter. Similar to this filter, we have N1 set of filters, which generates N1 set of features in this particular layer. That is the number of channels. Number of channels is number of filters we use in a particular layer.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other question?
Divya ma'am, you can proceed with the vote of thanks, I think.
Okay, sir. Thank you, Ratnakar sir. On behalf of Rishi Institution, I really extend a heartfelt thanks to you for your presence in this webinar and for enlightening us with the wonderful technological trends of neural networks. This surely going to help us a lot in the future and will encourage us to move in the new dimensions of education and technology. I would also thank all the participants of the webinar for taking out time and participating in such a huge number. Thank you. I would request all the participants to give their valuable feedback through the link being shared in the chat box.
So thank you all. Thank you all the participants and all the organizers and coordinators. So thank you again to making available for this session.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
The feedback link is posted in the chat box. I request everyone to fill this feedback form. The only reason is only if you fill this feedback form using this feedback Excel sheet, there is a program using this feedback sheet, and the certificates will be both linked up. Okay, so therefore I request everyone to fill this feedback form, which is given in the feedback chat box. Thank you very much, Ratnakar sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ratnakar sir.
Lakshmi ma'am.
Okay.
Jagan sir. Patnaik sir, thank you very much for being as a participant in this webinar. The last week we had a great session about you, and in this session we came as a participant. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Divya madam,
Okay,
you
thank
can
you.
end the session.
Okay,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Okay, madam.